We're going to be talking today about why are you falling for the antivirus myth? We're going to be talking about why antivirus doesn't work, what it really does and doesn't stop, why it doesn't work that way. And we're also going to be talking about what does. We're going to talk about why it's continuing to propagate and be as bad as it is. And I'm going to actually incorporate some real world examples that have happened to some Alignable members just in the last couple of weeks I've been made aware of by people that have attended our weekly and our live products that we do that we're going to talk about later. Our next one's on March 5th. We're going to be talking about, practices you can use in your everyday life to keep your family safe, to keep your data safe, and to keep yourself safe from hackers. So we're going to be talking about that on March 5th in our next In the Queue live session. So let's go ahead and get started. The myth. And I say the myth because it actually is a myth. All right. This is some older data, but it is accurate data. And that is that antivirus software just doesn't work. Okay. It's 20-year-old technology. It is not how hackers work now. Hackers hack people nowadays. Called social engineering is another term for it. But people are a lot easier to hack than hacking machines or networks. And so right now, with the current methods, and we're going to talk about that, only 94% of ransomware attacks are just simply going right past antivirus products. They're just outmatched. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why that's the case. Antivirus doesn't protect you from hackers at all because hackers are not antivirus software. Hackers use a number of different things to get through our systems. And if you ever want to go find out and verify some of this information I'm talking about, go into like ChatGPT and put why antivirus doesn't work, why it doesn't protect us from hackers. And you'll see some of these same things we're talking about today in that with much lengthier explanations that may confuse you, but we're going to stick to the hard points today. Antivirus software primarily focuses on detecting and removing malicious software such as viruses, worms, trojans, things that are already existent on your computer. Okay. So how it learns is it learns from data sets. In other words, that's why it has to be updated all the time. They can only teach it what they know about. So it doesn't account for things like zero-day exploits. Zero-day exploits are flaws in software that they don't have fixes for. There are zero-day flaws in Microsoft Edge, Microsoft Chrome, Firefox, your operating systems, both Mac and Windows, all have zero-day exploits. And I'm not just talking about a few, I'm talking about anywhere from 30 to 50 each. So at any active time, and those are just the ones we know about. And if you think hackers aren't aware of these, you're greatly mistaken. They use these exploits to get through to us. If you've ever had pop-ups occur on your screen or take over your whole screen when you land on a website, that is a zero-day exploit. That is somebody taking advantage of execution code in a browser to display something to you that's not true. And a lot of people buy it because what they're advertising is scary. Oh, your computer's been compromised. You don't turn it off or you may make it worse. Click here, call this to do that. This is so common and so many people fall for it. I just had a client who hadn't become our client yet, but they were actually at a couple of our webinars. We had some conversations with them, and between that time and when this happened, he actually fell for one of these, called the number on the screen and had them remote into his computer and install stuff they shouldn't have. And then he kind of called me after the fact and said, I think I did something wrong. And he told me what happened. I said, yeah, you definitely did something wrong. And so I had him unplug his machine and go to his local shop to get it fixed because it was on a Friday at 5. Not the best time to have that kind of thing happen. But these things happen all the time, and they happen to us on every platform, Mac OS, Mac and Windows. In Mac, the attacks on Macs are up over 600% over what they were just months ago. So Macs are becoming a bigger target. The big difference is there's only about 3.5% of the entire user base that use Macs. So Macs aren't as big of a target as Windows is. Advanced persistent threats, okay? These are kind of sophisticated targeted attacks that are orchestrated by hackers or even mostly state-sponsored groups out of Russia, Pakistan, North Korea, and places like this. Even the Philippines, we're seeing a lot of stuff come out of. They're devoted to evade traditional security measures, including antivirus. And they actually, what they do is they constantly go after the same vectors, but they slightly change. And so, being adaptable, it's harder for these antivirus products, which of course are only being trained off what we know about. It's harder for them to find these things, and thus more people fall for them. So we're seeing these are other ways that people are getting right past antivirus. Other things are polymorphic malware. Now, that's a really, it's a really fancy name, and I love that polymorphic. It sounds very sci-fi. But what it just means is that the programmers have put code in that can slightly adapt itself every time. So every time it infects a new system, it changes. It changes the signature, it changes the hashes that are used, and it makes it even more difficult for viruses programs to detect. And this is where again, where antivirus fails because it only trains off of what we know about, so it can't accommodate something that constantly changes. And so hackers are using this to bypass those traditional methods. They're also using it to evade detection by continually changing the malware that exists on the machine. So in other words, maybe it installs itself in one place, but then it goes installs itself under different names in 3 different places. So you get one, but you don't get the other 3. And then it just continually propagates itself over and over again. This is very, very common. Another thing we mentioned earlier, social engineering. And this is the biggest way that hack is being done is social engineering. And that includes phishing, that includes Facebook hacking, a number of things, using social media to get to us, clickbait ads. There's a lot of things that involve social engineering. That's a very big topic, but it is basically meant to fool individuals who are either not aware, not educated, not paying attention, and get them to click on things they normally wouldn't, or to put their passwords and information into stuff that looks legitimate but isn't. And then they get access to our email, other things that get them into our systems, but they are coming in through these methods, and they're not hacking our machines, they're hacking us as people. And you need to be aware that this is a business. It's happening by the millions. So when they put this stuff out, they're going after millions of people at a time. It's not personal. They're not going after, just healthcare or just automotive or just medical or hospitality. They're throwing tens, hundreds of millions out in this net, and they're grabbing everything they can because to them, every dollar counts. So I'm going to use some slides, a couple of slides from our last one, and just talk about what's really happening. And I'm going to track this back to 2018. These 2 bars represent 2 things. The 2 bars represent, the first one represents the dark blue, represents the number of attacks that happened in that year by the thousands. And then this little light bar here represents the average ransom that was paid in thousands. So at first, when this ransomware started becoming a really big thing, we were seeing a pretty high number of attacks, but the ransoms were very low. What happened is they found people paying ransoms, and they had to because they didn't know how to deal with it. So in 19, we saw a little bit of a decline, but we saw the ransoms go up by 5 times. It just literally went through the roof. Now going into 2020, we see this again. We see the attacks are about the same, but again, we see ransoms now have doubled over the previous year. And this trend continues to happen all the way through. We haven't got the firm figures for 2023 yet. We have some, but not all. And the figures are even worse. But you can see for the first time, we're seeing this attack vector reach the average ransom being just under $1 million, $991,000. That is the average ransom and remediation cost for a single breach. The average. Okay. So some are higher, some are lower. It depends on the target. But I want you to realize how big this crime is getting. This is basically 2 things I want you to pay attention to here. The costliest types of crime. So business email compromise, you can see the number 1 way they're getting in. Okay. And so phishing, huge problem. All right. There's a bunch of others here, but this one equals almost all the others combined. It's pretty close. But look at this figure. This is the thing that really is scary and to us in our business. This number is in the trillions. This is in trillion US dollars. This is the expected financial, basically, whatever impact that this is having on the business markets by the year. In this year, they're basically predicted for 2023 to be at 11.5 trillion. But look at this figure, 4 years from now, 23.8 trillion. That's more than double what it is now. That is just a tremendous amount of financial windfall. And right now, small businesses are 58% of their targets. So this is a really huge thing for you to pay attention to, and a reason for you to want to pay attention to it. Let's talk about how they get in for a minute. If antivirus isn't working, how are they getting in? I mean, what is the method? So we talked about phishing emails. We talked about clickbait pop-ups, those things that take over your entire screen, or maybe pop up just a corner in your lower right-hand side by your clock that says, "Oh, we've detected a virus. Call this number." Or, "We've detected a hacker. Call this number." I'm going to tell you right now that you need to exercise zero trust. This is a term you're going to hear a lot in our business. It's called zero trust. That means that you do not trust anything that is presented to you on your computer as real, especially if it comes through a pop-up or an email. Very, very important. If you suspect something is being compromised, like you get a notice about your email or your Netflix or your Hulu or your Dropbox, then you get out of that. Just ignore that. Close it. Get rid of it. Go to your actual account, log into it, and check it for yourself. Do not use the links in the emails. Do not use the links in the pop-ups. These are all methods in which all it takes is you clicking on it, landing on that page, and they can deliver payloads into your system without you doing anything further. This doesn't require them to have any interaction because of the browser flaws and the operating system flaws that exist in today's world. It does not require you putting stuff in. It just requires you landing on an infected website that can deliver a payload. And we call this fileless delivery. And this happens every day by the thousands. So you need to be very careful. The other thing we see is URL phishing. How many of you have actually, mistyped a website like Google and you put Google instead of Google? Office, you did OOFISE instead of two Fs. Hackers are buying up these domain names, and they are putting purposely infected web servers up. So when you land on them, you get pages that take over your screen and say, "Oh, you've landed on a website and we've detected a virus," or it might give you different messaging. Some take over your screen, some don't. This is notorious in gambling sites. This is notorious in porn sites. It's notorious in social media sites, free games, file sharing, all sorts of sites like this. It is not just restricted to the normal things. There's very popular ones in our industry that pop up for common tools we use to try and get into network admin accounts for people like us who administrate thousands of machines. So because to them that's a gold mine. So, and the other thing is Google results. A lot of people do not realize that the Google results that are presented to you, how many of you have gotten a page up, and up in this upper side over here, you have maybe a local business that presents that's a Google My Business. And then up in this other area, you've got about 5 or 6 results over here, but you have to look at those because those are ads. They say sponsored, or they say paid for by, but they have different terminology. But these first 5 or 6 results are almost always ads. They are not true results for your search. You have to scroll down the page further, and then you start seeing your actual results. People mistake these for results, and hackers are understanding this, and they are buying up keywords to get their ads to pop up in this place. And they are doing it for cybersecurity. They are doing it for all sorts of popular topics. So be very, very careful about what you click on in Google, and be aware that your search results start lower down the page, not in the ad section. Okay. What happens though is they're counting on you seeing these things, being busy, distracted. They look very realistic. They will come from friends sometimes. Sometimes you'll have a friend send you a spreadsheet, and it's not something that would normally your friend, or a PDF. It's not something your friend would normally send you. And best thing you can do is not trust it. Contact them and say, "Hey, did you send me this?" Before you open it. Delete. If it's important, they'll resend it. If it's real, it'll get resent. But do not trust it. All right. Pop-up lookalikes like we talked about. It looks like something legitimate, like it looks like Norton, but it's not. It's being powered by a browser. You don't pay attention, you click on it, and the next thing you know, you're infected. And they're using these browser exploits, your system not being up to date. I can't tell you how many people we talk to that say Windows updates is annoying, so I've shut it off. Worst thing you can do in the world is have an out-of-date system, because they release fixes 2 times a week that fix this on a normal release cycle, that fix what we call these zero-day exploits. And if you're not updating your system, then you're not getting the fixes for these that prevent hackers from executing this code on your machines. So very, very, very important. And Apple is becoming even more proactive. You've probably seen more updates come out of Apple than you've ever seen, and a lot more security involved. It used to be Apple was drag and drop, and it's installed. Now you got to go into the control panel, and you got to give it permission to do this and permission to do that. And that's because Apple has learned the hard way that you can't do that. You can't make it easy on users and be secure at the same time. Those two things do not go hand in hand. All right. Unpatched software. That means your Chrome, Firefox, things like that. If you see updates for them, by all means, update them, because Windows does not update them for you. Adobe has its own update system. Firefox, Chrome, all these have their own update systems, and other software use have their own. It does not all managed by Windows. So very, very important that you keep your software that's installed on your machines up to date. All right. And the last thing is ineffective protection, which is what we're talking about today. And that is that antivirus does not stop any of this stuff doesn't stop these hackers from using all these tools we just talked about to get into you and to get into your systems, because they get into them from you. File sharing, just so you know, is not a backup. I know that OneDrive likes to promote itself as a backup, so does Dropbox, but these file systems are connected to your computer in real time all the time, which means they are not a backup. What that means is a true backup takes a snapshot of something and then disconnects from the system, so the hackers or whoever compromises can't access them. Okay, that's the way a true backup is supposed to act. OneDrive and Dropbox and these file sharing services, they'll back up your stuff offsite. They don't say backup is a very loose term. It means that you may not lose it. If your device gets stolen, you'll be able to get your stuff back, but it doesn't stop them from encrypting that data. They can encrypt cloud data in OneDrive, in Office 365, and G Suite just as easily as they can anything on your hard drive, because it's available in real time all the time. So just be aware of this. It does not protect you against that kind of threat. One of the last things I'm going to talk about in this is phones, because there are 1,000 times more phones and tablets connected to the computer than there are computers. All right. There are people I know that don't even have computers. They just have phones and tablets. They have an iPad and they have an iPhone, or they have a Android tablet and a phone or a watch. All these things are devices now that are connected, and they are tools in which hackers can use to get into your life. I don't know about you, but my cell phone is the key to the kingdom in what I do. I have access to my business accounts, my personal accounts, the business email, work email, everything on here. And the only thing I put in here is stuff that's pertinent to what I need. I do not load games. I do not load entertainment things. I load just the things that I know I absolutely have to have in order to have things more convenient in my life. And I use biometrics on as much as I can. I'm not talking about face recognition. I'm talking about fingerprints. I think face recognition is okay. It can be faked right now with AI. We've actually seen some instances where people have put AI faces on other phones and been able to trick Facebook cameras, facial recognition. So facial recognition is not all it's knocked up to be. Fingerprints are better, but we're even seeing problems in that area. So I would definitely use biometrics wherever you can. And I say fingerprints are still the most safe to use in that area. But it's very important you be careful about what you put on your phone, because every week we're discovering new apps that people thought were legitimate that were not. Password manager apps that were meant to protect us, apps that were file sharing apps. Or I can tell you right now, I won't put WhatsApp on my phone, and I certainly won't put TikTok on my phone, because the amount of stuff they record has nothing to do with their services. They record everything on your phone, from everything you type to everything, every site you go to everything. And it's worse than Facebook. So there, you need to really pay attention to what you give permission to your phone to do and the applications in which you put on it. I do not have Facebook on my phone. I do not have anything that will track, that sends tracking information to a third party. They don't need access to my entire phone system, to my keyboard, to any of that, because that by default, that is in their user policy. They're allowed to use my GPS and track exactly where I've been everywhere I go. It's crazy the amount of permission you give these apps to do things, and a lot of people don't take the time to look at it, but they can literally tell where you are, when you're there, what your habits are, and they can use that information, sell it to third parties, and they can also use it in which to to be able to track habits. And you don't know who's seeing this data. That is one of the biggest problems. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit about what happens. What if you get hacked? Okay, now what? All right, most companies really don't have, really have not adequately planned for this kind of an event. Some have cybersecurity insurance. Some think they have backups or know they do, and they validated them and they're good, and that's fine. But most businesses, and I'm going to say 8 out of 10, are out of business in 6 months for a lot of various reasons. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Others have backups of their data and they can restore what was stolen. What was stolen, they can restore it. They can reload the system, restore the data, and be back up and running in a day. But they have not planned for the contingency that the hackers are selling this data and what that means to the reputation and liability of the company. If you are a doctor or you're in healthcare or finance or any kind of a business that has to be compliant, like insurance, healthcare, doctor, pharmacy, anything like that, where you are storing personal private information, PPI, or health, information like social security numbers, credit cards, that's PCI information. There are fines that go along with that. So let's say I have 1,000 clients and my data gets stolen. And I had credit card information and I happen to have social security, which is, I have both of those things. I am now open to six-figure fines for compliance failure and third-party liability lawsuits for all those, from each and every single one of those people. Okay. And some have cyber insurance and believe they're covered. Okay. We're going to talk about the why cyber insurance has changed in the last 3 years, and they had to, because insurance companies are in the business of collecting premiums, not paying out claims. And we're going to talk about how they get you and how a lot of claims are never paid because of some very simple facts. And let's kind of jump into that. Most claims for breaches are actually not paid, especially in the small business side, because small businesses have not read the fine print. And that is that you have to prove that every employee attended a cybersecurity awareness program. They have to have some written proof, like a certificate or something that says, I did this. And sometimes it's required every year, every 6 months. It's different depending on the insurance company. But the very minimum is every year. Your company must prove that it has proactive security policies in place. In other words, that you're enforcing MFA, that you have a good, solid anti-ransomware, anti-malware, basically a good protection product. And I'm going to tell you, if you think McAfee and Norton and those kind of products are things that are proven security products, you couldn't be any further from the truth. They are the worst in the industry. LifeLock, one of the biggest in the business, has been hacked 5 times. They've exposed millions of records, including their own founders. So if you're a LifeLock customer, your information's already out there. I had somebody contact me once and say, I got an alert from LifeLock that says I'm on, or from McAfee or whoever it was, or Experian, and my information's on the dark web. Guess what? My information's on the dark web. Okay. If you have a cell phone in this country, your information's on the dark web, because every single cell phone provider and almost every single bank has been breached at one time or another in the last 5 years. Okay. All of them. And even including like 23andMe, the DNA company. God, they exposed everybody. And then they tried to blame it on the customers for not using secure enough passwords. Well, guess what? You could have enforced that, but they didn't. They let it happen, so they are liable. and they're going to find that out probably in court. Going back to this though, you also have to determine the breach was not. If it's determined that there was a state actor affiliated or involved in that breach, like what I mean is like North Korea, a gang, a ransomware gang that was associated with Russia or any kind of state actor, they won't pay because that's considered an act of terrorism. So you're not going to get paid for that. You're not going to get a paid claim. If it's determined the breach was caused by a company contractor, an employee, an ex-employee, you're not going to get paid. Okay, these are all reasons insurance companies use to refuse to pay claims. And believe me, we've sat down in front of many CFOs where they sit there and tell us, no, that's not true. And then they go and look in the fine print and they come back and go, damn, you're right. And it's because they don't want you to know this. They want you to buy the insurance. And if you're in the insurance business, I'm not trying to say that's bad. There are a lot of claims that do get paid, but many don't, especially in small businesses for these reasons. And if you're in that business, you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to go ahead and stress one last thing here before we get into questions, and that is the financial impact to your business is huge. Your reputation, your loss of personal and business income, the possibility of losing your entire business is all at stake. And the question, the really sad part is that most people can get covered for less than they pay for their car payment every month and protect their livelihood. And that's the truth. We're going to talk about that. And when we get into the latter part after questions, I'm going to show you how you can get covered in a day with up to $1 million in coverage and have a fully managed cybersecurity product at your disposal at the end of this. And we're going to take you through it on how to get it or just how to find out more about it. So at this point, we're going to open up for questions and hand this back over to you.